Howdy, good people. Hopefully you're all doing well. These headphones I leave on. I might just take off. But wow. So that piece of shit Albanese meets with Keir Starmer, and suddenly Australia just seems to be more authoritarian again. They've already started arresting people for speaking, and it's just a very strange little thing that's going on with Australia. Is that a motorcycle? Yes, it is. And we're heading to an authoritarianship. I think that one of the thing that I've noticed, I've lived overseas for 20 years, good people, and I can tell you that Australia used to be different, as in, even when I'm on the freeway now, the traffic is backed up basically as soon as you hit. I remember 20 years. Look, Gold Coast 25 years, Australia 20 years. And I can remember 25 years ago, driving to Brisbane was a breeze. Now it's like a clusterfuck of cars, right? It's unbelievable. The cultural Marxists now, left lane must turn left, cool. Now, Australia Day just passed, and what I noticed is that the amount of anti-Australian sentiment is out of hand. You don't really see this lack of national pride in say Thailand or Japan or Equatorial Guinea, Kenya. You see them proudly waving their national flags and united, even indigenous populations, even the migrants. You see that they're proud to be there, and there are people in our nation, the radical left-wing lunatics, who hate the idea that indigenous people love this country. They, love the fact that we're a modern civil society. And I was just watching some videos where they're discrediting indigenous people who are holding up the Australian flag. Now, I've got no problem with the indigenous flag. I think it's quite pretty. But it's an identifier of a group of people, not a nation. Unfortunately, the indigenous Australians never formed a nation state and were really made up of different tribes in different regions, and that's fine. No problem with that. That's history. It's fantastic, isn't it? And but the British, just like every other nation, except for very few, was colonized by the British, which I think is probably if you're going to get colonized, you don't want the Chinese or the Dutch or the Spaniards. It's good that the British did it, because I think that if it was the Chinese, I'm not sure if there would be an indigenous Australian alive today. If you just have to read your history books to understand the perspective that the British pretty much didn't want to massacre everybody and have the country all to themselves. That's not to say there were some indiscretions. Of course there were, and you know, I wish they never occurred. But the cultural Marxists, the radical left-wing lunatics that sort of have now got a 15% voice in this nation, and really just trying to destroy our civil society with the help of the Uni Party, Labour and Liberal. It's definitely the Labour Party, and the Liberal Party is now Labour Party Light, L-I-T-E. You know, maybe a little bit less salt in the Liberal Party, but it's still the same. And I wonder what that motorcycle rider was doing. Oh, okay. So I've just realised how much more prominent they are in our society now. After coming back to the Gold Coast after 25 years, I'm like, you know, just watching it really, just watching on YouTube some videos, and I'm like, why do we allow them in? We because I don't think that these people truly understand. The radical left-wing lunatics don't understand that when they get what they deserve, which is an authoritarian Marxist regime in place, they're the subversives, because the leadership that comes in, the authoritarian leadership that comes in, knows that without the help of those people, they wouldn't be in power. So those people can organize, they're very subversive, they're very radical, and they believe that violence is a means to their end. So the first people in a communist dictatorship to actually get axed, amazingly, are the people that supported the communist empire the most. I don't know why people aren't reading their history books. I just don't understand them. But then again, just think about it for a minute. Could you get a sensible, knowledgeable person to support radical left-wing lunatics and the cultural Marxists? Of course you couldn't. You need your useful idiots. You need to fill their head with crap that leads to what we see in Iran right now, where the people want a revolution. They want to bring back their really what was the diamond in the rough of the Middle East during the Shah's reign, and it wasn't perfect. Political dissidents went to jail, and you know, all that stuff. But at least I think that the Persians understood the radical terrorists that want to destroy their society. So you have to clamp down on them. And unfortunately for a Western civil pluralistic society, we sort of tend to think everybody can be reformed. Well, not me. I know, you know, once you're a PDF, you can't, you know, there's no chance. Once you're using your religion as a means to you know, terrorism, then I don't think there's much that can be redeemed for you. But I think that with Albanese meeting with Keir Starmer last week, and with all the authoritarianship going on in the UK is becoming a dystopian nightmare. I mean, it is Orwell's 1984. It's scary, and Anthony Albanese is probably a little bit pissed off that he hasn't been able to achieve what Starmer has been able to achieve yet, and he's doing everything he can to catch up. And I'm very worried about my nation. Some things that just don't make sense. We have a housing crisis. I just drove by yesterday a homeless encampment of people who are not on drugs, they're not drinking. There are, you can read on Facebook families of, 4 that are not going to make it out. They're going to end up homeless and things. That doesn't seem to be help for them. But if you're a new migrant to Australia, there's a lot of programs for you to get help and assistance. I mean, before I came back, I saw here's the Victorian Premier, Jacinta Allen, in a migration program, handing over keys to a new migrant, to a home, to a housing commission home. There have been Australians on the list for 10 years. I'm not going to say where, but a guy at my gym, he says, I've been homeless. He's been homeless for 4 years, living in the back of his van. He's got fines up. He's got a lot of fines because he sleeps in the back of his van, and the police fine him. Nobody bothers to help him. He's only 35, and he's he says, but I don't want to be like this. I search for jobs. They ask, where do you live? I say, I live in the back of my van. I can't get a job and all this stuff. And you're like, man, what can you do? And he goes, I have no idea. But I've had 2 friends in the past 2 years that have ended their lives because of this situation, and no one seems to care. Who's going to care about the Australian-born Australians now? Like 2 million new migrants that we do not need. We don't have the infrastructure for them. And they're coming. No, you can't do this, Premier Albanese. I think he idolises people like Xi Jinping. So, not Prime Minister. Well, we'll call him. I don't want to call him Prime Minister. He's not, my Prime Minister would be Australians first. But, I just realised the Uni Party don't really care about Australians. They care about the sustenance and maintenance of their political parties above all else. Because they've only ever lived in the world of politics. When you think about it, Australia, we don't have a President Trump in Australia, like as somebody that comes from the business world who just runs and wins. In our system, we can't have these brilliant people just be put in place and start to do great things for us, because you have to go through the Uniparty. And I think we're seeing it broken, but I still don't understand how anybody other than the new migrants, Islamists, vote. I can understand why they vote Labor. I couldn't understand why anybody else would. Like, if you're a second generation Australian, Labor's not your friend. If you're a third generation, Labor has nothing for you. You got to be careful, man. Like these people. We'll stay here. Got to watch out for these Queensland drivers. They get really close to your butt, even though there's cars right in front of you and you can't turn, you can't get in the slow lane. They'll ride you, and you think, well, where do you expect me to go? But anyway, getting back to it, I can understand. So I'm just thinking about just the recent Bondi disaster, about how diluted this is all going to be. And it's already being deflected, because I do think that there's a lot of instances that cause a lot of questions. So, for example, some person threw something in Perth in the pro. would you call it pro-Aboriginal march? What is it? Invasion Day march? I think that's what they call it. Why isn't that being called an act of terrorism? And I think it's because if you call it an act of terrorism, it requires a deeper investigation. People don't want to go that far down. They'd rather just be able to use these instances to as quickly as possible than speech, right?